Hey, what's up everybody? In this video tutorial, we're going to be taking a look at how to create the M&M candy using Fusion 360. If you kind of think about M&Ms, M&Ms are really made of two different parts. You have that candy shell on the outside, and the inside is going to be made of that milk chocolate center. So in order to create this, we're actually going to have to create this as two different parts, and then we're going to assemble it. But the thing is, last time I checked, the material library in Fusion does not have candy coating and it doesn't have milk chocolate. So we're going to have to do a little bit of research and actually create our own material to use within Fusion 360. So with that being said, let's go ahead and let's get started. So in Fusion, what I'm first going to be doing, if this is like my very first piece of candy I'm going to be making for our entire candy project, is I need to create a new folder, and I'm just going to call this Candy Project. Okay, so within that Candy Project, I'm going to double click it to go into the folder. We can see that is empty. All right, so now we need to actually get a piece of candy like an M&M and actually start getting measurements for it. Okay, so once we get our measurements using our dial calipers, we're now going to come out here and create a sketch. So I'm going to be starting these right here on this work plane, and I'm going to be creating my profile that I'm going to use in order to create the candy. So going up here to create, I'm going to be finding ellipse. I'm going to start my ellipse right here at the origin. I'm going to pull this over to my right and then pull up on it. I don't care about dimensions at this point. Okay, so that is the shape I'm going to be looking for, okay, in order to create the profile. All right, so now we can go ahead and begin adding some dimensions to this. Okay, so using my dimension feature, I'm going to come here to the top right-hand side of my ellipse. I'm going to pull up on this, and we can see that this is going to be asking us for half of our major axis. So we found out in class, all right, that half of this dimension would be 0.265, okay, like so. Now, if it gets all wonky on us, don't freak out because we still need to add one more dimension. So in this case, I'm going to be picking the top right-hand corner of that ellipse, pulling this over, and now it's going to be asking for half of our minor axis. We found out in class that that was 0.135 using our dial calipers. Okay, and there we go. We have that ellipse. Okay, once again, our linear dimension going this direction is going to be 0.265, and then our height is going to be 0.135. All right, since we're wanting to revolve this, okay, what we're first going to have to do is come up and draw a line. It's going to be at the top of our ellipse and taking it down to the bottom of our ellipse. Okay, so when we go to revolve, okay, it's going to be wanting half of the profile. So I'm going to use trim. The left-hand side of our profile, I'm going to pick it to remove it. And now that's going to be leaving us with half of our ellipse. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and just finish the sketch on this, look at this in a home view, and now I'm going to come up and use Revolve. So Revolve, if it has just one profile available, it's pretty smart. It's going to detect where that closed loop is. All right, we can see it's detected that because it's this dark blue. Right below that, it's now asking for us to select our axis. So our axis in this case is going to be this vertical line. We send that around the full 360 and we say okay. All right, and there we go. All right, that's the first part of our M&M. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and just do a save right now, and I'm going to call this my M&M candy shell. That's going to be my first part. Now, the problem is, and if you're looking at this, you're realizing that this is solid, all right? This is not going to be solid, all right? It's actually just going to be the outer shell. So what we did in class was we actually opened up an M&M and we got dial calipers out and we actually measured what that shell thickness is, and we found out that that was 0.02. So what you're going to have to do on this is come up here and use shell. It's going to be asking you to select the faces or the body. Well, this is what we're talking about, so we'll pick it. And now it's asking us for what the thickness of that wall is. So we type in 0.02, we say okay. All right, and it is now shelled it out. Now the problem is that this is completely and totally enclosed. We can't see if that actually did the job or not. So what I'm going to do is come over here and I'm going to turn on my origin folder, and that's going to see, you're going to see it's going to turn on all three axes, all three planes, and it's also going to be showing the origin. So up here underneath inspect, you can see how we have something called section analysis. Okay, if we pick on section analysis, now we can go to a plane And we can pick on a plane. So the good candidates in this case would be this or this. This is going to be long way. So either one of these will work. I'm going to pick on that. And now I can see how it has sliced it down the middle, and I can see the inside of it. All right, we can see that material has been shelled out or scooped out, and now we're left with that wall of our M&M. What's kind of cool at this point is we can actually grab the arrow and we can see how this develops over the course, okay, of that M&M. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and just keep this exactly where it was, which was 0, which was right on that work plane, and I'm going to say OK. Now, if for any reason you want this to go away, you can always come here to your analysis and you can turn the eyeball off next to section. All right, it's no longer going to show it. All right, also in this case, okay, we can also turn off the origin. We no longer need that. Okay, now we can go ahead and do a save. All right, so right now our M&M candy shell is made of steel. All right, if we want to go out there and apply a material to it, we're not going to be finding candy coating. All right. So what we can also do, all right, if we had the time, is we could flick and pick the shell off of an M&M, and we could take that over and put it on the scale. Now that's going to be able to give us a weight. All right. Now, in order to find out what the density of a material is, we would have to know what its mass is, in our case weight, and we could divide that by the volume, which we could get from fusion. All right. The problem is it's really hard to pick off that shell and put it on that scale and actually get a weight. The other thing is that my weight in my classroom would not even be able to register what that actual weight is just because there's not enough material. So what we can do instead is we can go out and find what the density of the candy coating is. So believe it or not, if we just typed in candy coating density, you're going to see that a company has released what that candy coating shell is as far as its density goes. So if I roll over here, we're going to see ounces per cubic inch. All right, we can see on candy coating it's 0.59 ounces per cubic inch. Why do we want this particular unit? Well, let's take a look at Fusion. If we jump into Fusion, if we were to come up to our candy shell at the top of our browser, right click and say we want to add a physical material, you're going to see all sorts of different material that we can add to this. So in my case, I'm going to go to plastic. I'm going to drag ABS plastic onto it. We can see it changes. And then up here in the top where it says in this design, we can see ABS plastic. If we were to right click on ABS plastic and say we want to do an edit, it's going to show us that ABS plastic and in the material library within Fusion 360 is 0.613 ounces per cubic inches. That unit should look very familiar. That's what I found online. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to close out of this. I'm going to come into physical material. Okay, and if you're just kind of starting this, at this point, you need to come down to plastic folder. We're going to grab ABS plastic and apply it to our part. We're going to use this as a surrogate. It's not going to be perfect. There's a lot of other properties that we would have to enter, but right now, all we're really caring about is making sure that we have the right density so its weight is going to show up correctly. So what I'm going to do is come to my ABS plastic after I've applied it. I'm going to right click on it and pick on edit. So up here at the top, I'm now going to be giving this a color. So in my case, I'm going to say that my M&M is going to be red. And then I'm also going to say candy coating for my description. Okay, so now my density is coming in. It's asking me, well, do you want to keep this at 0.613, okay, which would be the one for ABS? And I'm going to say, no, I want to apply that number I just found online, okay, which we said was 0.59. So I'm going to come in here and change this to 0.59 ounces per cubic inch. All right, I'm not done with this yet because what I want to do is actually make it look like the candy shell, the color. So I'm going to go to Advanced. I'm going to go into the Appearance, come down, pick on the color box, and I'm going to pick a red color. Now, if this is too bright, you can always darken this up using this slider, but I'm liking how that looks like on top. So I'm going to say OK. I'm going to hit apply and then cancel out. All right, so just to make sure we've done this right, I'm going to right click on this here again, pick on edit. I can see it's red candy coating, it's 0.59, and obviously my color is red. So I'm going to hit done and then close out. All right, at this point, now we're going to go ahead and do a save. All right, so my M&M candy shell is done. So now I'm going to create a new design. All right, I'm going to start it out the same exact way as my last one. So we're going to be creating that chocolate center that's in the center of an M&M. So I'm going to create a sketch, go to my same work plane, and I'm just going to go ahead and draw the same ellipse that I did last time. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and create this just like so. I'm going to use my dimension. I'm going to pull this up. Okay, and as we said last time, this width was going to be 0.265. Remember, this is my half dimension. I'm now going to apply this dimension for its height, which is 0.135. Okay, and now what I'm going to do is when I come in here is I need to create the shell, because right now this profile is going to be the same exact size as our shell. So I'm going to be using offset. I'm going to pick on the ellipse. I'm going to use the scroll bar, bring it down towards the center, and now it's asking me how far I want to bring that in. So this is just your wall thickness. Since this is indicating negative, I need to put in a negative, and I'm going to type in negative 0.02. And now I'm going to say OK. So that's the actual thickness of our candy shell. What I'm now going to do is create the profile I'm going to use to create that chocolate center. So I'm going to draw a line starting from the top of this inner ellipse, take it down to the bottom. Okay, that's there for me to use. So I'm going to go ahead and finish up the sketch and look at this in a home view. All right, so now we can use revolve. Now revolve this time is not going to be as smart because there's too many profiles out there. And if I were smart, I would have gone out there and trimmed this up and done whatever. Okay, but in this case, I'm just going to leave this as it is so it shows where that candy shell is. All right, since it's not smart enough to detect that, we have to come in and pick on the inside of the profile that we want this to revolve. Now it's asking us right below, all right, there's a little selection box. We have to pick it. Now we're going to be picking on that vertical line, and it's going to be sending it around. So if I were to orbit this over, you can see how that chocolate center is right there in the middle of where that candy shell would be, and I'm going to say OK. All right, so there is our chocolate center. So at this point in time, I'm going to do a save. I'm going to call this my M&M Candy Chocolate Center, and I'm going to do a save. All right, so the same issue we ran into last time. Right now, this is going to be steel. All right, and that's not going to work for us. So once again, so just like last time, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be going out and finding what the density of the milk chocolate is for Mars candy, for M&Ms. So what we're going to do is just come in here. We're just going to Google this up, milk chocolate density for Mars, and I can see Mars snack food. This is for M&M's milk chocolate candy. Okay, if I come down, I'm going to be seeing that my ounce per cubic inch is going to be 0.51. All right, so we can use that in Fusion. All right, so here we go. If we right click up here at M&M Candy Chocolate, okay, what we're going to do now is right click on this and pick on physical material. Once again, we're going to be using ABS, and our plastic folder is our surrogate. We're going to apply it to it. Now we're going to come up here to ABS plastic. We're going to right click and say edit, and we're just going to call this milk chocolate. Okay, our density is obviously not correct. This should be 0.51. And now we can come in and go to advanced. We're going to go to appearance, go to our color. We can select the brown color. We can darken this up, make it look more like chocolate, say OK, apply it, and cancel out. Just to make sure that this is right, we're going to right click here and say edit. It's 0.51, it's milk chocolate, it's color, so we're done. We're done with this, so now we can go ahead and close out. So I'm just going to go ahead and do a save. Okay, so The only issue we're going to run into is when we go to create our assembly, there's not going to be a joint origin here. And the reason is that even though we've offset the existing ellipse, it's not going to detect that as a point to put a joint origin, so we have to manually put one in. All right, so in order to do this, we're going to have to come up here to the origin folder and turn on the eyeball. Okay, now we can see our planes, our axes, and we can see an origin. But since we want to create a joint origin, we're going to come underneath Assemble, and we're going to pick on Joint Origin. It's now asking us where we want to put our joint origin. We can place that right here at the origin itself and say OK. So now we can go ahead and save that up. So now we have our chocolate center to use for our M&M. All right, so we have the candy shell, we got the chocolate center. Now we're ready for the assembly. Okay, so I'm going to come up here, start a new design. I'm going to save this as M&M Candy Assembly. Okay, using my data panel, I can go ahead and bring in my shell. I'm going to drag this off the origin, say OK, and then I'm going to bring in my chocolate center, drag this off the origin and say OK. And the first thing we must do with every assembly is we have to come out here and make sure, all right, that one of these parts is going to be grounded. So I'm going to go to my shell, I'm going to right click on it, okay, and I'm going to come up here and pick on grounded. So the shell is not able to move, but my chocolate center is. All right, so all we have to do now is just assemble this. Okay, so if we come up here to joint, we can come in here close, we can find that joint origin, we can pick it, and now we can take that over to here, all right, and we can place that right onto our joint origin. For some reason, it's not showing up. Let's try that again. There it is. All right, so we got that to go in. Now that's totally within the shell itself. Okay, so we're good to go. We can say OK. All right, so now that that is assembled, we can go ahead and do a save and say OK. Now, what might happen sometimes, depending on the plane that you're drawing it, I'm just going to drag this shell in. Okay, I'm going to leave it right where it's at. Okay, I'm going to bring in my chocolate center again. Now what might happen sometimes is that it's going to be flipping in a totally different direction. Okay, it might look something like this. All right, and you can try joint origin several times and it's just not going to work for you. So what you can do is this. When you're starting your assembly, okay, go ahead, drag your shell in, leave it right there at the origin and say okay. Now bring your chocolate center in. It's going to show up right there. If it's in a different orientation like it's showing, all you have to do is just spin this, okay, get that like 90 degrees or 0 degrees or whatever, place it right in the center of it and say okay, and then come here to your shell and say you want that to be grounded. All right, that will also do the same exact thing, and then obviously you can save it. Okay, but in my case, I don't need that there. Okay, I have the one that I need, so I can go ahead and do a save. All right, so my assembly is completely and totally done. Okay, now what we need to do is create documentation for this. All right, so what we're going to do is switch this from design to drawing, pick on from design. All right, the template that you're going to be needing is going to be our IED title block. It's our custom title block, and we're going to say OK. All right, so my drawing opens up and I can see my M&M. So what I want you to do is make sure that the orientation of your M&M looks like mine. All right, if it's coming in looking like this, okay, switch this to a different orientation where it looks like this. So obviously this is very, very small. So I'm going to go ahead and just scale this up to like 8:1. It's going to be 8 times the size it is in real life. I'm going to place this over towards the center in my left, and I'm going to say OK. All right, so this isn't really an interesting drawing. Okay, we can't really see any of the inner workings of our M&M, so that's a problem. All right, so what we're going to do instead is we're going to use something called a section view. Okay, so if we come up here, we can find section view. What we have to do first is pick on the parent view, so that would be our front view. And now you're going to be seeing this little arrowhead and the A that's showing up with it. What we're going to do is come here to the top and find our endpoint. I'm not picking on it, I'm simply just hovering over it. And now I'm just going to pull up and we can see how it tracks off of that endpoint. That's what we want because we want this line to start out here off of that edge. So I'm going to pick it to start it. I'm going to go straight down, keep it vertical. I'm going to go past the edge out here in space, and I'm going to pick it to end it. Now I can hit the Enter key, and when I do that, I can see this new view showing up, all right, and it's actually going to be showing the inside of the M&M. So I'm going to place that view, and now what I'm going to do is actually come up here and turn this to shaded, and I'm going to say OK. Now, what's happening here is that it's showing that this is made of two different types of material. Okay, we can see hatch lines going in this direction for all this material, and then the inside, the hatch lines are going in the other direction, showing a different material. But we also have that shaded coming in and working for us as well. All right, so now what I'm going to do is well, we need one more view. All right, I'm going to get a pictorial view. So I'm going to come here to the front, pick it, move this up here. I'm going to pick it to place it, and I'm going to hit Enter. Okay, way too big, so we can double click this. I'm going to send this down to half the size that it was, so I'm going to bring this down to 4:1, and I'm going to be making sure it's shaded, and I'm going to go ahead and close out. Okay, so we have a really good section view. It's showing sort of how all this looks. Okay, now we need to get dimensions for the rest of our parts. So I'm going to say I want to add a new sheet. I'm going to come up here, go to base view. All right, we can see that my model is in here. I'm going to go ahead and just bring this up a little bit, maybe like 4:1. Okay, drop that in like so, and I'm going to go ahead and say OK. Okay, the problem is that I don't want this to be both parts in one. So I'm going to come here to my chocolate center. I'm going to turn the visibility off on that, and that's just going to be leaving me with my shell. All right, so I do want to show this. All right, so I want this to be a section view. Okay, I'm going to pick on the view. I'm going to start here at the endpoint, come up right above it, pick it to start it, and send it down past the actual edge. Okay, I can go ahead and hit Enter, go to the right. Okay, place that view in. I'm going to go ahead and say OK. All right, so this is the point when we could come out here and start dimensioning this up. So let's see if we can't get a center mark, which we can't, but let's go ahead and let's just get a dimension. So we should be able to get a dimension from here to here. Okay, we can see what the overall height is. And then I'm hoping we can get an actual width as well. Let's see if we can grab it. Looks like we're not going to be able to snag it. So if we want, let's just go ahead, just place that in as its own separate view, not as an assembly. Okay, and now we can go ahead and do a projected view of just that shell by itself. Shaded view. All right, so that one's done. Now we can add one more sheet, go to our base view. We'll switch this over to 4:1. Okay, we can place that in. We can say OK. And now we can come over here and we can find which one is which. So I want that to be my chocolate center, so I'm going to turn off my shell. Okay, and now I can go ahead and once again do a section view. So starting here at the top, I can pull this all the way down through it. I'm going to hit Enter, pull this over, drop that in, make sure it's okay with that, and then now we can go ahead and project a view. So we can show that at the top as a shaded view individually. All right, so there you go. That is how we create the M&M for our candy project. All right, so now that we're here at the end, one thing I forgot to mention was, well, how close were we to the real life thing? So here's what I did. I went over to the digital scale. I grabbed I think it was 7 M&Ms, and I put 7 M&Ms on the scale, and it told me that it was about 0.2 ounces. All right, so just to calculate this up, we have 0.2, we divide it by 7. All right, that means that each M&M should have weighed about 0.028 ounces. All right, so let's just see how close we were with infusion. So if we come into our actual assembly, what we can do is we can come right here to the top. We can right click on this, and now we can come down to properties. Okay, when properties comes up, you can scroll down here and find the little arrow next to physical. We can pull this in, and we can see at the M&M, it's telling us is about 0.021 ounces. All right, so we're really, really close to the actual value that we recorded off the digital scale. I mean, we're talking 0.007 ounces, which is hardly anything. So we were really, really close to what it is in real life. So that was exciting. We got it really close. So anyway, that's how you can always check on any of your, volume, your mass, density, area, center of gravity. That's all built right in there to Fusion. So just something to take a look at.